I just wanted to reintroduce a couple of our favorite people in the whole world, Laurel and Larry from Sandpoint. Just recalling, or Lynn and I were just recalling a few days ago where we had met Larry. One of the very first gatherings that we had ever done in Oregon. Whereabouts in Oregon, Larry?
Portland. Yeah.
Portland?
Yeah.
They had rented the second story of a building there on Main Street. And we were all, do you recall this?
Yes.
When we were all settling down, we kept delaying our getting started because they were repairing the street and all the jackhammers and everything. So I can barely hear you down there. So, Larry, I just kind of, in a half-kidding fashion, I said, well, you know, if we just ask the Holy Spirit to take care of this, He could stop that. And as I snapped my fingers, everything stopped.
How long did it take stop?
The most surprised person in the room.
And Larry has been telling everybody since then that you can perform miracles. In a lot of ways.
Well, I don't know how far I've progressed because I remember the first conversation that we had. It was in that meeting, and I asked Tom a question. I said if I was struggling with the idea that everything we see is a creation of our own mind, and I said to Tom, I said if I took hot water and poured it over chocolate and expected to get orange juice, is that what would happen? And we went round and round with that for about 15 minutes, you know, and I'm still barely struggling with that.
Have you actually tried it?
I understand the principle, but I still have a feeling that this is real when I'm not thinking right.
You know, I've been reading a book called Presence of Angels. If you don't have an open mind and you want to have one, read that book.
What's the first word?
Presence of Angels. It's about a healer who actually healed the mother of a friend of several of us here. And he said he was introduced when he was a young man to a guy named Dr. Cook, who had a reputation as being somewhat unusual. So he's at Dr. Cook's house. And Dr. Cook offers him a cup of tea and asks him if he wants sugar. And he said, no, he didn't. And Dr. Cook says, well, I'm all out of sugar. He says, but I always like sugar in my tea. And right then his doorbell rang. He went to the door and there's a guy with a cup of sugar there. He takes 2 teaspoons of sugar, puts it in his tea, thanks the guy, and shuts the door. Goes back over and sits down. So he told several stories about this Dr. Cook that were like that. Somehow he had figured out how to make that happen.
That's called A Course in Miracles.
Yeah, there you go. He said another time Dr. Cook told him, he said to the universe or God or whatever, I need $300 or something. I forget what it was. But he needed $300. He's walking down the street and this guy comes up to him with 3 $100 bills in his hand. And he's handing them to him. And this is like one of the first times this had happened to Dr. Cook. So he says to this guy, what are you doing? And the guy says, what do you mean? He says, you're giving me $300. And the guy says, I am? And he looks down and there's the $300 bills and he grabs hold of it. He's not going to give them to him.
Well, that's funny.
It's a fascinating book.
It comes tomorrow.
I had something that happened just before we opened up here. I was by myself, and which I get here early, just to read primarily, do homework or whatever they Tom wants us to do. But I have a favorite prayer that I said when I was standing here, and that's I make the decision to turn my life and my will over to the care of God as I understand Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for me and the strength to carry it out. Then, for some reason, I picked this book up, and I've never done this before with this book, but I picked it up, and it opened to this page, Lesson 116. God's will for me is perfect happiness. God's will is perfect happiness for me, and I can suffer, but from the belief there is another will apart from His. And then the second phrase is, I share God's will for happiness for me. I share my Father's will for me, His Son. What He has given me is all I want. What He has given me is all there is. And I left it open and I said, wow, all I have to do is think about this now and stick to it one time. That's the first time here that I've had that happen. It's happened before, but I got Myers' marching orders right there. Perfect happiness.
That's a good word. Marching orders.
It's easy to see why he suggests that perhaps we're insane by accepting our story over God's will. I wonder how it is that we finally come to accept the miracles, so-called, in place of our perception. What do you suppose it is that shifts, that allows us to have that experience?
The absence of resistance.
Say again, please.
The absence of resistance.
Yes.
What is to
Yes.
the moment.
That would be one way of describing it.
I've gotten to believe that when I truly want it, I'll have it. I'll see it.
Is there a difference between wanting it? Is there a difference between wanting it and accepting it?
I don't think so. I don't know.
Do you have the feeling that you really wanted something, but you just weren't quite sure why you didn't have it?
Well,
Tom, I had an experience a couple weekends ago. Our daughter was having a huge double wedding weekend that she overbooked herself and really, she was stressing and everything. And plus on top of that, she wasn't feeling really well. And I remember I was stressing about it a little myself, and I woke up early one morning, and we were out of town, so I wasn't there to help her. And I woke up like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I just said this prayer to just be with her, make this beautiful, make it stress-free. I can't remember the exact words, but I had such a shift. My intention, and I really wanted this for her, but I had such a shift that it absolutely happened. Everything was going to be perfect, and I had no doubt in my mind. Remember, I mentioned it to Tom. It's like everything just shifted. So when you said, what do I want, and then I totally accepted this total. I knew from everything in me that it was going to be perfect and beautiful, and my gosh, it was. I mean, everything worked out perfect for her. And
Go ahead.
I'm done.
No, I mean, what Tom is saying is as wanting as opposed to accepting, because everything we everything is already ours. Really, I mean, all of our, what you want to call it, happiness or peace or whatever, it's already ours. It's a matter of accepting it, because wanting and fearing are two objects that are problems for us. So there's a common saying that two reasons for unhappiness are, one is not getting what we want, and the second one is getting what we want. So whenever we want anything, we're opening ourselves up for unhappiness, and just by accepting what's already ours, there it is. You know?
How many of us believe that we already have everything?
Sometimes I believe that. Sometimes I believe that. Not all the time.
Sometimes I believe that you have everything.
Shall we ask him to explain that?
I think we did. No, I'm serious.
Just waiting to hear the smack.
Her state of mind is happy and at peace. And what else do you want? I mean, I've never met anyone in my entire life like Patty. And she will make the best of situations. She will help people. She will look at the positive side of everything. And so it's easy for me to see her as having everything or being everything. If, as you read, Don, God's will for us is perfect happiness, then what else do we want? So I'm not really being facetious here. I just feel very fortunate. And when the Course says, if you can find one person, don't try to even see through the bodies to say I shouldn't see bodies. I mean, it'd be nice if we could. But if you could just take one other being and know that they are totally innocent, then that is all that you need to do. And Patty's as close to that as I can say. I don't want to embarrass her, but that's a major thing. If we can accept that it's possible for one person to be truly innocent in this dream, then it's got to be possible for everyone in it.
So, what does it take to accept that? Truly accept that. Not just mostly, but 100% to accept that.
It takes a rising above judgments, in my mind.
Would it not require that you saw yourself being wholly innocent?
Yes.
Love everybody.
But wouldn't you first, before you could love everybody, wouldn't you first have to establish an absolute awareness that you were the presence of love yourself? And there was nothing about you that was not love.
So this is accepting the atonement for yourself, isn't it?
Well, it feels
Exactly.
it feels like forgiveness, the way that the Course defines it.
Yeah.
It is forgiveness.
Just complete and total forgiveness.
Yes.
And it feels to me, the more I've been with the Course, that all forgiveness is self-forgiveness. Because that's all that's going on. So the more I just work with here, whatever judgments or stories are going on about what's right here,
We spent
and everything
most of
else
last
start
week
to let go.
discussing what it would be, or what it was that we each expected to get from the course. I think this is the second part of that. If there is anything that we expect to get that we won't allow ourselves to receive, where is it going to end up? Will we just continue to be totally frustrated? If I expect the course to provide a sense of awakening for me, that's a perfectly legitimate thing to say, for any of us to say. And yet, if I am unwilling to accept my being perfectly awake right now, then what? What will I experience? And if I am willing to be perfectly awake right now, must I not then be wanting to see you perfectly awake right now?
Well, in my first experience after this many years ago now, I loved everybody. I was wanting to do handsprings down on the beach, and I thought, that wouldn't look right. But that was the case, and I didn't expect anybody else to be any different, because it was all love, no matter what.
Why are you speaking past tense?
Oh, it's still there, but I use it seldomly anymore. Well, I never know when it's going to arise.
What is it that arrives?
Well, situations like this, when I get a feeling that he's with me, and sometimes it's really intense, and sometimes it isn't. And sometimes, just wait. So I have to be patient and wait.
Anyone else have anything to add?
I'm thinking about that statement, I am the Holy Son of God. And I wouldn't say that the Holy Son of God is guilty. So if I really believe that I am the Holy Son of God, then I am innocent. It's true of all of you, too.
In law, sometimes they say, plead insanity, right, as your defense. And it's kind of funny, but if we are happy, people think we're insane. It's so many of us, and myself especially, sometimes I try to hide how happy I am, because they're not happy, and I don't want to look like I'm doing a superiority thing with them. But I'm kind of thinking, come on, dude, be happy, and they don't want to be happy, and so I think they have the right not to be happy, and then I leave them alone.
We've been looking a lot at the belief that we can hold conflicting beliefs. We cannot hold conflicting beliefs, but we believe that we can, and we believe that we do. Believe that this is real, and I say no, it isn't real. It's a dream. It's illusion. And yet, there's those two thoughts. We have to question, which one am I going to believe? Which one am I going to take in as the in my heart of hearts is the truth.
Which one's already in your heart that's is?
You're right.
Seems to me that the critical element here is belief. And if you're a person who is kind of stuck in the habit of believing things probabilistically and depending upon evidence, then you never get to the end of this story where you get absolute belief. And it's always just kind of a matter of degree, and you can't turn the corner.
I think it has a lot to do with the fact, what are we looking for? If we're looking for happiness or joy or peace or any of those things, we see it. And if we're looking for what's wrong, man, it's out there. So it's kind of like, where do you direct? I'm talking to me now. Where do I direct my focus? And where I insist on directing it is, what a beautiful, wonderful experience this is. And it has its ups and downs, yeah, but I still wouldn't be anywhere else. People say, well, what do you want to be when you're dead? I don't know. I'll be dead, I guess. I don't care. I'm here. I'm happy. It's enough.
I'm still waiting to find out what I want to be when I grow up.
I don't say when I grow up, I say if I grow up.
So, have you given any more thought to what your goal in this lifetime is? Like we were discussing last week?
I love that slogan for the Army that says, "Be all that you can be."
And what would that be, Brian?
I'm not sure.
It's an evolving thing. Yeah.
One of the things would be to not be in the Army.
Yeah.
I think you could be happy in the Army.
I wasn't.
Well, that was your choice.
You never did enough services, dear.
That's the only thing I like about the Army is that slogan.
I think happiness is just really such a simple decision that I'm surprised that I don't make it more often. And I'm really surprised that some people almost never make it.
Or believe they can?
Or don't, yeah, they don't even know they can. Yeah, it's right there. But it's so easy to be happy. I mean, in this holy instant, and that's what it always is, this holy instant. Is there anything wrong? No. So we're all happy. In this holy instant. Now it's another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. And you know what? I haven't found any unholy instances yet.
When we realize that happiness is a choice, not a condition, that's the whole essence of it.
That's the shift.
Yeah.
Last night we camped in this lake called Mayfield Lake, and it's just this beautiful lake. And I woke up in the middle of the night and the moon was shining on the wall, and and then I watched the moon set and the myths come up. I mean, every scene was so idyllic and peaceful and beautiful. And it just really hit me that peace, love, joy is truth. And my only problem is my belief that there can be something else. And the possibility that there can be something else. And to give up the idea that it's even possible that there can be anything other than love, peace, joy. I've been looking at the idea of possibility for a long time, and see where I can look at something and say, well, I'd never do that. But I believe it's possible, and that's the split mind, I think, that I can believe two different things.
And as long as we believe that there's something out there that can make us happy or sad or anything instead of in here, then we have that problem. Because that is the split.
And recognizing that when I see what I saw, that it's what's inside me, that it's what I've been looking at. It's not out there and causing me to feel peace and beauty. That's in me and it's being projected out. And that's a big deal for me right now, is to get that recognition of really that I am only seeing what I believe. It's amazing how many times I notice that I think it's out there and I have to protect myself or something. And
So who is the I that's seeing this?
well, I believe that it's the oneness, love, God, however you want to say it.
I happen to believe there's no out there.
I do too.
And from that place, all there is whatever I decide there is. So,
Well,
you know, and we read, and it says, you know, a lot of places that you have everything that God has. God was your father and you're the child. You have everything God has. And to me, that gives me the power and the right to see only happiness. And I know there's other people who don't feel that way, and I honor them.
well, what if you believed that wasn't possible?
What?
What if you believed it wasn't possible, that there's other people that believe that, other things?
Well, I think that we all have the right not only to be absolutely at peace or to be absolutely suffering. And that's because God loves us and says, go for it. Whatever you want to do it. And so some of us suffer and some of us enjoy.
I think her question, as I hear it, is if you're looking at the world with Christ's vision, can you see other people?
I read something this week that when I first read it, it sort of, I didn't quite understand it at first. And I'd kind of like to get the input on what you think this means. And I shared this with you a little bit ago. Contemplate experience through the rising of the three conditions: subject, object, and interaction between the two. Each condition is empty, so then the other two are perceived as empty as well. You cannot attach to or contemplate one without the presence of the other two. These are causes and conditions having no real substance that rise and disintegrate into infinity. To me, that who we really are is the subject, and the objects are everything that we experience. Other people, other things, other space.
Or
And
everything we project, you could say.
yeah, everything that other than the subject. And then the interaction between the two. And this comes right back to what the Course says. Nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. So therefore, all of it disintegrates into infinity.
The Course says the mind must project or extend. It cannot do nothing.
Right, because that's our condition.
So it's going to create an object and consider itself as the subject. And then it boils down to, what does it think it is? because that's going to be reflected in what it creates.
What Tom is saying is so vitally important for us to recognize. He constantly tries to reassure us that when we feel alone, it's an attempt on the ego's part to deny the presence of God. And what he says is no moment can exist in which the presence of the one who created that moment is not present. And since we are a part of that, it is impossible to be alone. Patty, you had something you found there.
It's just another way to say what you just said, actually. It's in chapter 31, the very last part of the text here.
What page?
It's on 668.
In the text?
Text, yes.
It's just paragraph 9. It just says, "Let us be glad that we can walk the world and find so many chances to perceive another situation where God's gift can once again be recognized as ours." And that just grabbed me. "And thus will all the vestiges of hell, the secret sins and hidden hates be gone, and all the loveliness which they concealed appear like lawns of heaven to our sight, to lift us high above the thorny roads we traveled on before the Christ appeared. Hear me, my brothers, hear and join with me. God has ordained, I cannot call in vain, and in his certainty I rest content. For you will hear and you will choose again, and in this choice is everyone made free." And that just
Over and over and over again. Every time we are tempted to search for something that is missing, if we can come back to the awareness that we are a part of the one creation, where everything that is exists.
So there is no separation. You realize there is no separation.
I ask you to once again consider what Jesus says is one of the most important precepts of all that he offers in this teaching. And yet it is so fundamentally necessary for us to accept it wholly. There is no sin.
What's that saying? Your sinlessness is guaranteed by God.
Absolutely guaranteed.
Yeah.
One other situation that came up years ago, if I could relate it, it's pretty short. I put in for a job and didn't get it. And I thought I deserved it. And I thought I should have it. And I thought, as I went to my apartment and opened the door, I thought, what is wrong with me? I can't get this job. And I went over across the room and I had received this book. It was by Norman Vincent Peale. And by chance, it opened again right in front of me. And he said, a disappointment is an appointment you made. If God had made that for you, you wouldn't have missed it. I said, oh, okay. And that put me to rest for a long, long time. It wasn't up to me to worry about that. It just keep struggling along and it'll show up.
Be careful what you ask for, you just might get it.
Well, it was primarily about disappointments.
Yeah.
Me making those disappointments real.
I mean, I went
Yeah.
for a job once upon a time that if I didn't get that job, the worst thing that ever happened to me. And for 30 years thereafter, I wished I never had gotten that job.
Yeah.
So, I think we gotta have, I want. And then from there on, it's such a good deal.
Well, we learned that everything we want is not good for us.
Yeah. Wanting and then
Yeah.
comes the fearing after that.
So I'm no longer in charge of my own life, so I'll let it go for that.
I think you bring into the forum, though, something really important, and that is that our embodiment of Course principle really, really gets put to the test when we're faced with something that we could consider a crisis or painful or difficult. We lose a really close loved one to a terrible car wreck, or we lose the job, or these kinds of things that can really send a person reeling. And that's where things really, really get put to the test. Not really just on any old typical day. Yes, we still need to be so diligent and vigilant with our work on those days, but when something really comes out of left field, it's then that we really see, like in the midst of all that pain that gets triggered, now what? Can I be with this, whatever it is that's here, or am I going to resist it, keep shoving it away and make it wrong and can I love that too? Like whatever is there, somehow opening. It's like opening, always this sense. I always seem to feel guided when I really get serious about, okay, I don't want to be in pain anymore. I'm done with this. And hopefully I do it in a matter of minutes or a matter of hours, or hopefully it doesn't go on for days and days. But it's always opening to be with really what's right here. And it seems to inevitably always lead to that love, just that vast. And then it's almost just like empty space, air, breathing, and it's really possible to get beyond that pain, even with really, really huge things. And what I find for myself and my direct exercise of that is whoa, freedom, love. It's like feeling loved by my own self as the power in the universe for staying open and no longer in pain over that death or that thing that so-and-so said that hurt 5 people in the family, or whatever the drama, whatever the thing, right? And then at some point I might find myself, for whatever reason, contracting, and then there's pain again, and then have to go through the exercise all over again until it's just clear. But in those moments of clarity, it's like, wow, it really is, with the idea of this is painful, this is an attack on my reality in some way, with those ideas and thoughts, there it is. And by staying open and staying clear and willing to let it keep moving, like not even refusing the owie of it. It's just like letting it be. It seems to dissipate, rather quickly. That's just what I see, what I seem to notice. It seems to dissipate rather quickly, and then it's like, whoa. We really don't have to stay wallowing in that pit,
What could you not accept?
Say that
If
again?
you but knew.
Say-
I say, what could you not accept if you but knew that everything, all events, past, present, and to come, were gently planned by one
Yes.
whose only purpose was your good?
Yes.
But perhaps you
because-
misunderstood his plan.
Yes, and from there, that's seen, and that's where it's almost like just love, just this loving bliss of, oh, God, it's all a part of it. It's just so beautiful, so then whatever the thing that's happened that was initially interpreted as a bad thing is no more at all. It's just still that love seems to be working to wake me up, but like everybody up. The whole thing is just one big orchestrated
I think when you look back when we look back on our lives, it's kind of interesting because I'll reflect on things that during a certain period of time where I identified my life as one major shitstorm after another. Because, but it's what I asked for, but had I not experienced that, I would have not looked for this. I would have not realized, searched that, hey, there's got to be a better way. Had I not experienced that suffering, and we've all experienced that suffering, we would not seek or we would not allow the wisdom to come into our acceptance. So I'm grateful now. I mean, I used to just really want to PO'd all the time because this had to happen to me, But I'm grateful that it did now. I mean, so the whole process.
Let's not get ourselves in the mode where we think there is some value to pain and suffering. This is a big thing for the ego. And it's always the ego's real trial of your devotion to it is to ensure you that once you accept being totally happy, it's going to find something that I guarantee you will not be happy with. Because we always want to come back to that belief that out of pain and suffering comes some kind of good. And believe me, there is no good that comes from pain and suffering. None. It's the good that comes from recognizing that pain and suffering is a false hope. Not the pain and suffering itself. It is from our recognition that there is no value in the pain and suffering.
Would there not possibly be a value in pain and suffering in so much as it might stimulate the thought there must be a better way?
There is, Roger. There's no denying that there is. But that is a real ego ploy. I'm not saying don't use it. But please do recognize it for what it is. Because even the thought that there must be a better way would never have to arise if we didn't believe that there was something already wrong. So it's this question of what does come first, the chicken or the egg. Does the suffering come first, and then we find a way to relieve ourselves from the suffering? That's the ego way. The truth is that when you read something about it's impossible for you not to have the peace and happiness of God, it's only because that is the natural state, and when we are in that state, there is no sense of anything being wrong to raise or bring back or reflect and experience that something could be wrong.
Yeah.
So always remind yourself that what we are trying to remember is the perfect peace of God from which, to which, there is no opposite.
When I used to hear that, Tom, and up until not that long ago, I always thought that what God planned for me was these difficult experiences so I could learn and da-da-da. And, and it finally occurred to me what God plans for us is perfect peace and happiness. That He doesn't plan all these difficult situations in my life so I can learn and give them up. And
well, we forget the next couple of lines that I quoted just a moment ago. What could you not accept? Perhaps we have misunderstood His plan and thought that it would bring us pain. While we made plans for death, it led us to everlasting life. But it's the story of our making plans for death that requires us to have something that would deny the pain and suffering, you see. And as long as we are struggling with that belief, then that's going to be part of our story. So when I pray to be shown the truth, it is not to see the truth in my story or to change my story to truth, but to let it go. Simply that. Just help me let it go.
I believe that it's beneficial, like you say, Roger, to bring us to a point of saying there must be a better way. The problem is when my ego got a hold of that in the past, and I actually thought I believed it, then I would say, well, okay, if this suffering is something I need in order to awaken to this better way, then I must be doing it wrong. I must not be suffering enough. How much suffering do I need before I have enough?
My ego says, think, Donald, there's got to be a more difficult way. So I can't win. I give it up.
When I moved in with Ken and Sally, I had gotten a divorce, and that was a big story. But Sally was so patient. They're dear friends of ours, and she used to sit and listen to me go over and over my story. Finally, one day, after a considerable amount of time, in a very loving way, she said, Laurel, I'm tired of listening to this. And I was crushed. I went away crushed, feeling unloved, uncared for. But I thought about it for a day or so, and I thought, I'm sick of it too. It's the truth. That was like the greatest. It's like, I'm sick of it too, and gone. But it didn't feel kind at the time.
There's
She's
one
talking about Sally and Ken Iyer.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, one of my favorite people.
Yeah, a lot of people's
He was a
favorite.
mentor for.
There's one prayer in this book that I love so much because as soon as you say it, it's answered. It says, let all things be exactly as they are. Oh, wait, they already are exactly as they are. And to me, that's very, very powerful. And what it's saying is, exactly as it is has got to be the perfection of the moment. Not total perfection, but the perfection of the moment. So if I'm in a tough place, the perfection of the moment is I'm struggling, and that's perfect. If I'm in a great place, the perfection of the moment is I'm at peace, and that's perfect. But let all things be exactly as they are. That's the most powerful prayer I've ever heard. And it's always true.
There's a added piece to that I would say, which has to do with all things as they are minus the story. And that's the part that I keep using the word opening. I don't know why, that's just the word that comes to me, but it seems to keep the energy of the situation. It's like a living process. It seems to keep it opening to the point without the story, where it just
as they are.
Where the whole
There
thing
is
just
no
seems
story.
to release. Huh?
As they are.
As they are, there is no story.
story.
So it's like without me gnawing on that story, the energy just kind of dissipates itself. And that's the return to that utter clarity and that peace and that love, despite whatever has happened, because I'm not running the story for myself anymore around it. And so not even the story of I'm struggling or anything, just, and that's, I think, that super radical acceptance of the moment. And the most acceptance is really of right here, of myself, right? Whatever, the fact that something seems to have gotten triggered. or whatever. That, because that becomes the next story. Oh, I'm triggered. You know, and so that then has to be dropped too. Just like one story after another, you know?
You know, we've said that God does not interfere in the illusion. But if we look at the history of theology and our own personal history, we've all believed that God does interfere in the illusion. That God creates miracles, or God does punish people, or I've offended God in some way. I've gotten separate from God in some way. So God doesn't interfere in the illusion, but I do. I'm the one that made it up. I'm the one who had that thought that projected out here that I saw, that I thought was outside myself, and that was the mistake. The belief that there could be something outside of my own thought.
How many of us
Yes.
sought any kind of wisdom literature just out of the blue? I mean, we talk about, well, we don't, maybe I misunderstood this, but we say we don't have to experience suffering to seek, or to seek a better way. I don't think any of us in here just came upon A Course in Miracles by accident. I mean, there was a reason that we sought whatever it was, the course or Buddhism or whatever, God. Again, I really, without our story as it is, realizing our story as it is, none of us would have sought a course or anything else. I mean, I don't think there's a person in this room that just hasn't suffered in some capacity.
Well, I know for myself, I believed that the way to God was through suffering. That was a belief I had, and this has helped me change it. I remember the day deciding bull on that. It doesn't mean I don't still do it, but I do not have to find truth through suffering. I do not have to.
You don't have to, but even at this point in my life, I still suffer when my ego takes over. I mean,
Do you feel like that leads you to the truth, though?
oh, I think I'm already aware of the truth, but I still really have my relapses. You know, I mean, I'm going to walk out of here today and somebody might cut me off in traffic and I might have an instant reaction to that, but then I'll see it. Whereas before I just go ballistic, you know. Yeah. But, I just have a I'm grateful for what I have experienced up to this point, because even I continue to experience the difficulty. If I didn't, I would be aware.
Couldn't you come across the Course in Miracles and be curious? I mean, I know that I know times in my life that I was suffering. I mean, I don't think I'm really suffering now. As I've gotten older, it's like I self-help books or whatever, but I came across the Course in Miracles just because I was so curious.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like everybody's going through their own journey in life.
Sure.
But it was that curiosity. And if I can keep the curiosity, and even the curiosity when things I think are not like how I want them to be, and like keep that curiosity, that is going to spark my entire life. It's just be curious, be curious.
I'm not necessarily a curious person, so that's why I feel I've experienced somewhat of a miracle. Mm-hmm. I was at a state in a very stressful career where, I mean, I couldn't even attend a meeting without having somebody sit there and translate. I was at that point. I was in Costco and I saw this audio tape by this former Catholic priest. Well, I was raised Catholic. I thought, well, this has got to be helpful, because I wasn't really happy about being a Catholic at that point. And from there, that former Catholic priest told me about the Course, told me about Eckhart Tolle, told me about so many things that I pursued, and my God, this is really good stuff. And at that point, I came out of the sewer, of my own making.
A Catholic nun introduced me to the Course.
Yeah. I had a Catholic nun tell me about Siddhartha. I'm going in the 8th grade.
She's probably the same one.
And I hated her guts.
Oh, you wouldn't hate this.
But no, I mean, if I had picked up on that at that time, well, hey, maybe I could eliminate a lot of suffering right there. But I didn't.
I think there's something fundamental that we might look at in this idea of is it suffering or is it curiosity? And I would lean that basically we're talking about a motivation, aren't we? Mm-hmm. So I think the question is, you can actually, suffering's an idea of a crutch, I think. We come into this world limited by a body and amnesia. So the thing that moves us forward is this all there is? There must be something more than this. Look at people who have everything it appears in life. Money, fame, good schools, good friends, good everything else. Do they not say at some point in their lives there must be something more? Is this it? And then I die? So that's basically built into each of our beings, that when we have taken the step from a recognition of everything, at least theoretically, to have ourselves blown up so that we can come back in pieces and then know eventually that we have everything not only theoretically but experientially, when the atonement is all shared at the end and we're all meet, as it says in the Course. Everything's built in along the way to know that I feel there's something more. And there is. There has to be. And when we are everything, then what? There has to be something more. What would it be? What would it be? To extend. That's what it talks about when it says our creations. To extend that process. That's the creation process.
I can recall I'm about 34, 35 years old in the restaurant business, getting up every morning, going to work, coming home, going to bed, and doing it every day. And one day just saying to myself, there's got to be more to life than this. And I don't know where that statement came from, but I still remember saying it.
Well, Tom and I both left successful businesses. You know, I don't think either one of us, Tom, it wasn't out of fear or the idea that it couldn't continue to be successful. We just knew there had to be something more.
I think what I find amazing is that statement, and that's been said several times here today, that through so-called experiences of suffering comes this statement of there's got to be something better than this or more than this, something else. In that, when I feel that statement, that itself almost feels like a step out of suffering. It feels truthful. It feels honest, like an arrow that leads to something clear.
Can we? Do you think we could feel that without making it important? Because that very thing we all have, do you think we could do that without giving it importance?
What do you mean? Giving what importance?
The pain or suffering or whatever.
I think we can, because I've experienced that myself many times. And the thing about it is that the minefield of the race says we shouldn't do that. We should be feeling bad. So it's really that kind of, what I find for myself is like a shift out of that minefield that says this is how you're supposed to feel when such and such happens, to that it doesn't have to feel that way. And the forgiveness part of it is that dropping of the story that says this happened and this happening is a bad thing. It's a terrible suffering thing, when in truth it didn't really happen anyway. And it's such a radical thing to think that, or to consider that, number one. Certainly even far more radical to even try to communicate it to anybody. But yeah, I think we can. And I feel, it seems to me egoic consciousness itself is a ground of suffering, because it's not true. And so when that thought suddenly comes, it's like a breath of fresh air, like something fresh has somehow entered into that whole untruth and said, wait a minute, there's got to be something other than this. There's got to be something. And it's like something comes in, like something got, something entered into that can lead us. And that to me is a little bit different than suffering. So we might look at that situation as a suffering one, but when I came to the Course, I just felt crazy in love with God. And I picked this up somewhere and opened it and went, oh my God, herein lies the peace of God. This is the most truthful thing I've ever heard. In words, in spoken words. And I felt like it just, something in me, I felt like it was kindling fire in me, just to read that. But I do think we can.
Larry for years said, we can't get outside of God, we can't get outside of God. And I was like, oh, shut up. But, then I started taking it to heart. And I look at what you said in a little different way now. It's like, we cannot get outside of God. We are one with God.
Yes.
We cannot change that. And so this idea that something comes into us or something, maybe what happens is there's a break in our thought or something that we actually experience where we are, who we are. Not that something comes in or something, but we get to experience the truth of who we are. And to me, I just like the feel of that more. It's not something I have to obtain. It's just something that is, and I allow it to be for maybe a moment.
Yeah.
And it seems like something, but it's not. It's just.
Well, it doesn't even matter what it's called. It's just that
doesn't.
It's being experienced.
But to me, it's important to know that that's what we are. It's not something outside of me that I'm looking for. It's something that we are.
Yes.
No, Tom, I'm kind of curious about the statement that you started that off with a little while ago, that we come into this world in a body.
We choose the separation, and the separation, the symbol of the separation is the body.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. And we come into this world believing in sin and separation.
The thought of separation chooses the body, chooses the ego. The ego, basically, I think, could be looked at as the thought of separation.
So coming into the world then would just be the instance that the thought is made.
It's the effect of the thought.
Has nothing to do with birth.
Well, it's part of the story, the birth thing.
Yeah.
We come into a story in agreement with others who agreed to come into that same story. The Course tells us that we couldn't even do this if there wasn't some fundamental agreement to begin with. And that's where you can get thoughts about the children's game. Or if you want to go through the matrix theory. It's got to be an agreement of coming in with the idea of playing this part with what appears to be total amnesia, which is only from the part of the character in the story. Because our self with a capital S, I believe, knows what's going on all the way along. And this is where you can get to a section in the course that says, what could you not accept? And this is where you can get to lesson 158 that talks about a script. And then you can look at the other part that talks about two scripts. One of the ego and then the Holy Spirit's answer to it.
It sounds like, all of these issues that we're talking about are not really made in this world. They're communicating between thoughts and holy mind.
That's, Roger, why I've been, a number of weeks in a row, I was saying I want to go back to my split mind that made that decision in the first place. I want to go back to that place and choose again. And then when I actually said that and meant it, I got in touch with that split mind. And then I had a dialogue with it, and then I shut it off. Because I found out, really, if I think about it, and I'm saying this now for the first time, that I am in control, and I could affect it. And my world would disappear as I see it now. How many of us are willing to let that just go poof?
Yeah, that is our greatest fear. That it will simply go poof. I think the first time the nun that Laurel referred to before, her name was Elsie. She is the most unconventional nun I've ever met.
Outrageous.
One of our first times together, we were doing a gathering over in Sandpoint, and then we were asked to speak at the church. And she was going to introduce us to the congregation. So she got up there and gave a little talk and then said, "Now I'd like to introduce you to the man I go to bed with every night."
Of course she did.
I recall one time when I actually shocked her, though. We were at Ken and Sally's for a retreat, and we broke for lunch. We had a big lunch, and Sister Elsie sat down at the end of this real long couch, and I sat down at the end of it, and we both went to sleep. And somebody come and said, "Oh, it's time to go back to the meeting." And I jumped up and I looked at her. She said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "I never slept with a nun before." Didn't have a reply to that one.
She's thinking one.
You have to understand, of course, that she was listening to recordings that Tom was that had been made for.
She always spoils it.
There is a paragraph that we just read the other day. It's in the section from perception to knowledge, and it's paragraph 3.
What page are you on?
258.
258 in the text?
It was so amazing to me. And I would just, some point, if you guys feel inclined to read it, it's just really...
You have any one of those paragraphs in particular? Or the whole thing? Or
it's paragraph 3.
Paragraph 3.
What page?
Why not read?
258. 258, paragraph
3.
3.
Yeah.
Different section here. What, chapter 13?
Why don't you read it?
I'd love to if you guys want to hear it. I just love this paragraph because perfect perception then has many elements in common with knowledge. making transfer to it possible. Yet the last step must be taken by God, because the last step in your redemption, which seems to be in the future, was accomplished by God in your creation. The separation has not interrupted it. Creation cannot be interrupted. The separation is merely a faulty formulation of reality with no effect at all. The miracle without a function in heaven is needful here. Aspects of reality can still be seen, and they will replace aspects of unreality. Aspects of reality can be seen in everything and everywhere, yet only God can gather them together by crowning them as one with the final gift of eternity.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Well, I love it because it's kind of like truth is here. God is here right now. And I'm just tweaking it and think I can't see it. Think it's somewhere else. I just love that.
I like the part also in that paragraph that says that your redemption seems to be in the future, but was accomplished by God in creation. In other words, it's impossible to get outside of God. Not only that, but this is already over. This illusion is over, was over at the time that God created us. There was an instant, and God laughed and it was done. And if we remember that, then what can I feel guilty about? What can I be unhappy about? I can make myself guilty, and I frequently do. I can make myself unhappy, and I frequently do. But
No,
I do.
But it's I didn't mean to take their job.
I always say my first wife taught me one important lesson, and that is, what is wrong with you is not a question.
Not up for debate.
I had one of those too.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to bring up? Thomas?
I'm going with the flow.
Well, as we were talking, I kept hearing the statement too that Tom says once in a while that we are here to experience what God is not. And there's so many times that it's so helpful for me to remember that, in the news or in a situation where I'm really wound up and fretful or whatever, then I would think, okay, this is what God is not. What I'm experiencing right now, God is not this. And then it just kind of snaps me out of it. And then that's when I am aware and I do ask for help, or I'll say a prayer, or I'll have a conversation with Jesus, who is my great friend, or God, or whatever I feel at the moment. And then then I'm back into that space where I'm there with God and I'm not alone and I'm not fretful anymore. Maybe it doesn't change the situation, but I'm not as fearful anymore because I'm experiencing it through God. I'm not experiencing it as what God is not.
If we can remember to ask the Holy Spirit in those times, show me what part of this is true, and then see what's left. Because we're likely to realize the whole thing is let go. The answer that I just asked that question internally, and the answer I got is the only part that's true of any situation is the truth that comes forth from you as you bring it to that situation.
Maybe I could share a poem that seems kind of appropriate to what we've been talking about. This one's called The Cowboy. Several people have told me this is their favorite of all the ones I've written. I went to a cowboy movie the other day, and everything the cowboy said, I heard myself say. I saw everything the cowboy sees, and I felt the same ache he felt in his knees. I felt his emotions, his ups and his downs, his anger and frustration, his smiles and his frowns. I smelled all the smells that came from the herd, and I felt a slight movement whenever his horse stirred. I thought all the same things that the cowboy thought, and I wore the same boots that the cowboy had bought. I tasted his coffee so hot and so black, and I felt his warm sweat as it ran down his back. I soon asked myself, how could this be? Could I be the cowboy that I went to see? Or am I a witness who merely took note of all of the scenes that the screenwriter wrote? I'm not too sure, it all seems so hazy. If I think I'm the cowboy, then I must be crazy. But wait a minute, I'm still wearing a 10-gallon hat. God, please help me to understand that. I think it's a pretty good comment on what's happening here.
Yes.
We feel everything, we see everything, all the senses are in use all the time, and we've got to believe that we're the cowboy, and we're not.
That cowboy character or characterization is perfect for the idea of the hero of the dream, isn't it? Because that's what all the cowboy movies are.
The hero of the dream. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't know, I was a cowboy and I got bucked off every day. It's hard to be a hero when you're on the gun.
The hero needs a villain.
And you kept getting back on. You were really,
This is too much information.
Till I learned how to ride.
My cowboy movie was very bad because I lived on a ranch and I was allergic to horses.
Oh, no. Oh, my gosh. Oh, my goodness.
My favorite cowboy is Willie Nelson, and he has a saying that he says, if love is the question and truth is the answer, I've been lying to me all along. He's a pretend cowboy.
When I was a very young man, there were just 3 of us, 6 boys at that time. We lived way out in the mountains in Colorado, and we actually rode a horse to school every day. But I was about that tall. And so what would happen is my oldest brother would get the horse and drag him over to a rock, and I would climb up on the rock, and I had to jump. And it was a good distance, for a little guy. It seemed like a big distance. I had to jump, and then my second brother, Jerry, had to catch me. And there were many times when it didn't happen. And so this story is particularly apt to me. This idea of being a cowboy is not all it's cracked up to be.